What organizations have you worked closely with here in Charlotte?
How far back do you want me to go?
As far back as you want. Maybe give me like a top
I'll start
4.
from now and I'll work my way back.
Okay.
Charlotte Environmental Action, I was really involved with that. And peripherally with Greenpeace. I was involved with Rainforest Action Network when they were around. And before that, I've been involved with Helping Empower Local People, HELP, which doesn't exist anymore. And before that, with Carolina Interfaith Task Force on Central America in the 80s, which worked on peace and justice in Central America issues. And before that, I worked with a group called North Carolina Political Prisoners Committee around the Wilmington 10 and Charlotte 3 cases, and I worked against the Vietnam War, and also with a group called Charlotte Women United, which really was the first women's liberation group in Charlotte back in the 70s. Anyway, there were some other things too, but that's good enough.
That's incredible. So it sounds like you've been in Charlotte for quite a while.
Since 1968.
Since 1968. Wow. So what brought you all the way back then to start, in activism and really showing your support against some of these things?
In 1968, we thought we could change the world. That's what got me involved.
Great. So what issues are close to your heart now? What are you really working for today?
I guess number one is coal ash, or coal ash cleanup.
Yeah, definitely. And Greenpeace is really trying to get some progress on that. So since the passage of Citizens United in 2011, we've seen a large influx of money going into elections and into the government itself. So what are your thoughts on that change?
Well, North Carolina, for the last period of time, I don't know, 10 or 20 years, has been 50-50 Republican-Democrat. And the way the demographics look, it looks like it's going to be less Republican and more Democrat. But a number of years ago, the Koch brothers and others invested a lot of money in this state and other states, but I'm just talking about North Carolina. Republicans have created a redistricting process which has created an all-Republican legislature. Well, a great majority of the legislature is Republican, and the governor's Republican, even though the state is split 50-50. In other words, the government does not reflect the people. And that is because of money from outside the state, from people like the Koch brothers that have poured into the state in the last 15 years, that has created this all-Republican government in a 50-50 state.
And so now, bringing it to Duke, which is an in-state form of the money coming into elections and campaigns, what do you think that does, for North Carolina families? Like you said, it's not very representative, but do you think that there should be, a cap on it?
Duke has controlled the North Carolina legislature as long as I've lived here and before.
Wow.
And it doesn't matter if it's Republican or Democrat in power, Duke has controlled the state government.
And so, have you seen in your own life your own life here that they are, putting their own interests in front? Do you feel like there's any way that your voice can be heard over Duke?
I think my voice and our voices can be heard, and I think if we put our voices together, we could possibly be heard over Duke. My voice alone will never be heard over Duke. Duke has had a huge impact in this state, not just in coal ash, but because they're a monopoly of their industry, they are in control.
Definitely. And so, what are your thoughts on McCrory's time as governor here?
I think McCrory's been a disaster.
Is there any specific legislation that he's passed that has really, affected you and made you think about, what's going on?
Before the Dan River spill, I was involved with the coal ash issue. Living here on the Catawba River, we're located right in between the River Bend plant, which of course is closed now, but they're still in the process of trying to clean up the mess that they made, and the Allen plant just south of here. And so I've been really involved and interested in coal ash over the last number of years, and I have been very unhappy, to put it mildly, with Governor McCrory. He has handled the coal ash issue in a very slimy manner.
Definitely. Well, since you've been here in Charlotte, working since all the way back in the 70s, can you tell me about some of your biggest successes?
Doing this kind of work, even if you have big successes, it's never defined as a big success. It's defined by the greater society as something else. Like, for example, the war in Vietnam didn't stop because of protesters, we are told. It stopped because President Nixon negotiated a peace agreement. I suppose there have been big successes, but I have a hard time putting my finger on it.
Have you been involved in anything maybe recently with Greenpeace, possibly with like Repower Schools?
I haven't been involved with that. I've mostly been involved with
the
coal
coal
ash.
ash.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's an ongoing fight. So sometimes there's small victories that, that hopefully lead to something bigger.
Well, like for example, I would call that what happened with coal ash in South Carolina a victory. I was not involved with that, but if that happened in North Carolina, I would call it a victory. But, we're pretty far from that at this point.
Yeah, just got to keep working on it, right?
Yeah.
So what do you hope to see in North Carolina, maybe in the near future, or, just something that's coming up that you'd like to see? Anything changed, possible legislation, or?
I'd like to speak in a more general term. What I would like to see is the needs of the people put above the needs of the corporations. And that Duke Energy, for example, as one example of a corporation, exists to serve the people and not to take as much as they can from the people. That's what I'd like to see, a change in the greater economic morality or something.
Yeah.
I don't know how to put it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.